Okay, so we're starting the Maimer Vayihyu Chayei Sarah, shin lamede. We're now in Parshas Lech Lecha. Parshas Chayei Sarah is 2 weeks away, but it's appropriate that we're starting the Maimer in Parshas Lech Lecha because the Rebbe says that in our times, this the Rebbe said Shin on Beis, the last shichus that we heard from Parshas Lech Lecha, that it's already time. Now is the time for Lech Lecha, the emes of Lech Lecha, that we should go out of Golus and go to Eretz Yisrael, and we have to start doing the Aveda of Lech Lecha now. Going to Eretz Yisrael with Mashiach means that we're going to conquer not only the 7 lands that the Yidden conquered earlier, but we're going to conquer all the 10 lands. The Rebbe says that that since now is the time for Lech Lecha Me'aretz to go to Eretz Yisrael, so we have to do an Aveda Me'enza. The Aveda Me'enza is to learn Chassidus and to learn in Yonei Gulo Mashiach. And that's conquering all the 10 pchinas, the midis and the seichel. So this maimer is Sai Chassidus, Sai Pnimius HaTeira, and Sai it talks a lot about Mashiach later in the maimer. So let's get started. The beginning of the maimer, and probably all we're going to learn today, is going to be basically explain a summary of a maimer from the Eber Hashab, and to a large degree, it's actually similar to another maimer, to another one of the Rebbe's Mamorim Vayihyu Chayei Sarah that's also based on this maimer. The Rebbe said Kama v'Kama Mamorim based on this maimer of the Rebbe Hashab. It's a Chaf of maimer, a Chaf Cheshvan. Excuse me, it's a Chaf Cheshvan for the yahrzeit of the Rebbe Hashab. So let's get started. Vayihyu Chayei Sarah Mea Shana v'Esim Shana v'Sheva Shana v'Shnei Chayei Sarah, and the years of Sarah of her life were 100 years and 20 years and 7 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah. Excuse me, I said Chav Cheshvan is the yahrzeit. Chav Cheshvan is the birthday. Yeah, and I should know that, being that my birthday is on business in the yahrzeit of the Eber Hashab, who I'm named after, so I should have known that. I'll go upon him. So Chav Cheshvan, the Bal Yom Holedes, he says in his maimer of Chav Cheshvan, the same Dibra Maskul Vayihyu Chayei Sarah, he asks, it already says in the pasuk, in the beginning of the pasuk, Vayihyu Chayei Sarah, that these were the years of Sarah. Why does the pasuk again repeat itself at the end and say these were the years of Sarah? You already told me at the beginning, Vayihyu Chayei Sarah. And the Rebbe continues in his maimer, the Zohar tells the on the pasuk Vayihyu Chayei Sarah, and his mevayer tchila is a pasuk v'Yisrael eretz bakoli melch l'sada neva. Yisrael eretz bakoli melch l'sada neva. This is the pasuk. It would have been helpful to print the pasuk so everybody could look at it, because we're gonna keep referencing so many different words, and it can get a little confusing, a little complicated. The different parts of the pasuk, what goes on what's referring to what. So let's try to hold the words of the pasuk in our heads.
First of all, what's the pasuk shot in the pasuk?
Okay, the pasuk shot to the best of my ability is Azay. The Yisrael and Eretz Bakoli, the advantage of the earth, of the land, which L'chura is the lowest, is in everything. And where do you see that the advantage is in everything? The Melech l'sada neva. The king is a slave to the field. Without the field, he can't have food, he can't eat, he can't live. So even the king, the highest madrega, is an eved to the sada. So you see that the earth has an advantage over everything, even over the king. Okay, so the Zohar says like this on the pasuk. He doesn't bring the Zohar? I thought he does. Let's see what happens. So afterwards, the Rebbe Hashab says the Inin Vayihyu Chayei Sarah hu shesara zachsa l'chayin eloin. So first the Rebbe Hashab brings the beer of the Zohar on this pasuk. And afterwards he explains the Inyan of Vayihyu Chayei Sarah, that the what is the pasuk telling us with these words? Vayihyu Chayei Sarah, that Sarah was zeicha to the higher level of life. Sfran, regular life, or Chaim Tachtenim, whatever that means. And then there's a higher level of life, Chaim Eloin, the Hechera, and Me'emes Leben. We're going to see soon in this ice, what does the Chayin Eloin mean? So what's the connection between V'Yisrael and Eretz? I'm sorry, this is the Zohar. I said that the Zohar continues to say that V'Yihyu Chayei Sarah is that Sarah was Zeichel l'Chayin Eloin. The Zohar makes a connection between these two psukim, V'Yihyu Chayei Sarah and this pasuk of Melech l'Sada Neva. What's the connection between these two? So he says like this. This is the beat of the Rebbe Rashab. The Eretz v'Sada him b'chinas Malchus. Eretz and Sada both refer to Malchus. We're going to see soon later in the Maimon what's Eretz and what's Sada. But b'chlalos, they're both the meaning of Malchus. V'inin Yisrin Eretz bakoli melech l'Sada nevad hu hamshachas ha'eretz shelamayla Malchus. Is being mamshich the eretz that are higher than Malchus. You have two levels of eretz that are higher than Malchus. B'chinas kol or b'chinas melech. And you're being mamshechit b'malchus, in malchus. In other words, the Rebbe Rashab takes the pasuk and divides it into two, and says that each one of them is making a statement. Yisrein eretz bakol. That's the first madrega. That eretz gets something from kol, and then melech l'sada nevad. That sada gets the inyan of melech. So eretz and sada is one idea as malchus, and the first part of the pasuk is saying the malchus gets the madrega of kol. And the second part of the pasuk is saying that Malchus gets the madrega of Melech, as we're going to explain weiter. And this is the connection between the pasuk that the Zohar brings to the pasuk of Vayihyu Chayei Sarah that the Zohar connects it with. Ki Sarah hi b'chinas Malchus. Dugmas eretz v'Sada. Sarah is the b'china of Malchus. Similar to the words in the pasuk, the concept in the pasuk of eretz and Sada. When the Zohar says that Sarah was zeicha to the higher form, to the higher level of life, that Sarah was zeicha that she should receive the eres that are higher than Malchus. Similar to how we say that Malchus receives kol and Sarah receives melech, which is both Malchus, so too Sarah, which is also b'chinas of Malchus, receives the chayin Elohim, the eres that are higher than her. Okay. Now the Rebbe Rashab goes into detail. The Rebbe Rashab points out that there are four distinct levels and concepts in this pasuk. We have shtei b'chinas of Malchus. Like we said before, we have two words in the pasuk for Malchus, eretz and sada, which are actually two different levels within Malchus, as we'll see. And then you have shtei b'chinas b'ha'eretz shelamayla Malchus. We have two levels in the eretz that are higher than Malchus, Hanimshach and the Malchus, which are Nimshach, which are drawn down into Malchus, which are B'chinas Kol, B'chinas Melech. You have two levels that are brought into Malchus, Kol and Melech. So in total, we have four ideas over here. Umevayer, the Rebbe Rashab explains the Esrim Shana v'Sheva Shanim Hu al derech B'chinas Kol. The beginning of the pasuk where we say Vayihyu Chayei Sarah Esrim Shana v'Sheva Shanim is the idea of Kol, and then the pasuk continues. Umeya Shana. I'm sorry, I didn't say it in the right order of the pasuk. This is all in the beginning of the pasuk. The pasuk says Meya Shana v'Esrim Shana v'Sheva Shanim. So we have the idea of Meya of 100, and then we have the idea of Esrim and Sheva. So the Rebbe Rashab says that Esrim and Sheva are the smaller parts of the number, the smaller units of the number. The 20 and the 7, those refer to Kol. And the larger unit, the Meya, that's B'chinas Melech, the higher level. Okay, klar, whatever that's supposed to mean, that then we come to the end of the pasuk to an entirely higher level. Vayihyu Chayei Sarah is talking about bringing in these higher levels. Sai of Meya Shana, which is Melech, and Sai Esim Shana and Sheva Shana, which is Malchus. And then we have the end of the pasuk, Shnei Chayei Sarah hu sha'chayin loin nimshchu b'biyah. That this higher life that was nimshach into Malchus was then nimshach into Biyah, which is already an entirely new idea that Deb is going to get back to much later in the Maimon.
So the first one is to Malchus Datzilus.
To Malchus Datzilus.
And from there, the next level is to go into
Biyah.
Biyah.
Sai Melech and Sai Kol goes further into Biyah. V'tzarich la'avin. What did the Rebbe Rashab start off with? He started off with a question. Why does it say Vayihyu Chayei Sarah and then it says Shnei Chayei Sarah? So Negel Vayihyu Chayei Sarah Hamshachas Chayin Elohim b'Malchus. It was enough for the Rebbe Rashab to explain in his Maimer that Vayihyu Chayei Sarah means that we're being Mamshech Chaim Elohim b'Malchus. Once you say that, you could already explain that what we're adding with Shnei Chayei Sarah Hamshachas b'Biyah. That we're being mamshich, whatever Malchus received and was drawn down into it, we're now being mamshich that into Biyah. But the Rebbe Rashab puts a different idea in the middle. Only after the Rebbe Rashab brings the explanation for the pasuk Visanet that is Malchus and Kol and Melech is the Eretz there are the months. And then he explains it's Shaykhs to the pasuk Vayihyu Chayei Sarah, and only then does he go on to say that the end of the pasuk Shnei Chayei Sarah is talking about being mamshich the Eretz of higher than Malchus further down into Bia. Mashma shal desem tesuf bir binin de Shnei Chayei Sarah. That the Hamshacha Bibya, we can understand it better only after discussing the idea of Yisin Eretz Bakali and Melech L'Sada Nevad. Questions, Rami? Good, more or less. What's the question? He wants to know why Yisin Eretz Bakali and Melech L'Sada Nevad. Why is that Negeya? The question of the Eber Hashab was that the pasuk is repetitive. You say Vayihyu Chayei Sarah and then say Shnei Chayei Sarah, and the Eber Hashab answers it's not repetitive. The first thing is Amshachas Chayei Loin into Malchus, that's Vayihyu Chayei Sarah, and the second is Amshachas Chayei Loin into Bia. So it's already not repetitive. Why does he have to explain that concept of Yisin Eretz Bakolhi, and only then can he continue? L'chura, it's not negaya. It's not to get to the answer to explaining the repetitiveness.
But once he brought the pasuk down,
so he brought the Zayah. Why did he have to bring the Zayah? For Chayei Loin. Fine, so bring the Zayah. The Zayah says that it's Chayei Loin. Why does he have to bring the whole the more
Yisin
Eretz Bakoli and Melech L'Sada Nevad and the Bimevayet explained the four inyanim in it. How does that help us understand and take away the repetitiveness? Yeah. Okay, Rami, weiter? Okay, good. You're enjoying. Good. All right. So we're setting the ground over here so we could discuss what's going on later in the Maimer. Like I said, now the Rebbe is summarizing the Rebbe Rashab's Maimer, which is going to go on for another 2 pages. Came out another page and a half, and then once we have these ideas in our head clear, we'll be able to continue with what the Rebbe wants to teach us. So we said that we have 2 madregas eretz and sad, and we already mentioned before that they're both 2 different madregas in Malchus. Did he say anything more about it? No, he didn't say. He just said that these are 2 different beginnas of Malchus. So what are they? So he says like this: the eretz hu klolos ha'elam. When you say eretz, you're saying the land, the earth. You're referring to the world in general. V'sada, and the field, which is hamuvchar sheba'aretz, the most special, the most good part of the land. Hu Gan Eden. Where do you plant? You plant in fertile land. You don't plant in a place where it's full of rocks. You don't plant in a place where there's no soil. Yeah, the difference between sand and soil, everybody knows. Right? Sand is you can't really grow in sand. It's like trying to grow things in the desert. Soil is where you have the leaves and the little animals and all the other things that decompose, and they create a very rich a mineral or a nutrient rich topsoil, a layer on top of the regular earth. And this is and in places of the world, for example, the Ukraine and the United States of America were both known as the breadbasket. The Ukraine was the breadbasket of Russia, and that's why you had in the 1920s, Stalin decided just to take all the produce of Ukraine and feed the rest of Russia proper with it. And they had the Great Famine that many of our Zaydas, uncles, whatever, died in. But they pushed it. So Ukraine is very fertile land. What's his name? George Rohr. One of his big investments now is he's buying up farmland or leasing farmland in Ukraine. Yeah, there's very fertile land in Ukraine. Yeah. And the United States is known as the breadbasket of the world. The United States exports farm products in a tremendous amounts. Why? Because some places of the world have better soil, and it's more.
Much better than Africa, etc. Middle East.
For sure, than the Middle East. Yeah. It's very.
Except for Israel.
Except. Yeah.
No, Israel does have very good land.
It's amazing.
Where in the north?
Golan and Hebron.
No, Hebron actually called it Trashim.
Yeah, but the best wine comes from there.
Okay, I guess I don't know.
It's volcanic.
Okay, but wherever those places are. But the point is that you have the earth in general. Not every place on the earth is a good place to plant things. When you say a field, farmland, what you're saying is places where it's a special part of the earth where you have good soil, nutrient with a lot of nutrients in it, and that's what a sada represents. So what's the special place in the world in Madregas Ruchnim? Hu Gan Eden. It's Gan Eden. Gan Eden is the special part of the world, the best part, the choice part of the world. V'chiluk zeh shebein klalos ha'olam legan Eden, and this difference that you have one level, which is the world in general, which is not a high madrega. And then you have a part of the world that is a high madrega, which is Gan Eden. It's not only a technical thing that this one is better than the other one on a technical level, but it's actually because of their shayrish. In other words, they're be'etzim. There's a more pneumistic and etzimdik difference between Gan Eden and Eretz. They're entirely two different things, but it's not where they come from. Okay? What's their shayrish? So it says like this: the world in general was created from Chitzenius HaMalchus, which we're going to explain soon the significance of it. And that's called Eretz. The Hagan Eden, however, is different. Comes from Pnimius HaMalchus, which is called Sada. Okay, I'm going to get back to that shortly. The Pnimius HaMalchus and Chitzenius HaMalchus. That just like the mile of a field is that it's an appropriate place to grow crops, to plant and to grow crops. In other words, the same amount of work that you'll put into a place that's not a field, you'll get much less. If you put it in a field, it's an appropriate place. It's a good place. It's a place where you get a good yield, a good result. So too in Torah, everything is meduyik, the mashal and the nimshal. So Gan Eden is also a very special place for something to grow. When we do mitzvahs, we're mamshech into the lower levels, the Ein Sof, and then later when Mashiach comes, there's going to be the tzmicha, there's going to be the gilui, the growth of these Eiris that we're being mamshech now. And what's a place that's roi, that's good, and where you'll get the crops growing if you plant them there. So Gan Eden. If you do mitzvahs in Gan Eden and your zereya, the Ein Sof in Gan Eden, so then you'll get a good tzmicha. Mashenk in the rest of the land is not such a good place to bring about the zriya of Gan Eden. We're going to learn the brackets. It's a long brackets. We're going to learn it quickly. That David took initially David took Adam and put him in Gan Eden. Why did David put other mission in Gan Eden that he should do 10 mitzvahs over there? Dafka, you could do mitzvahs anywhere, because Gan Eden because Gan Eden is a place which is very it's a good place. It's no problem. I don't have the right types for Mokim Mukhshar. It's a good place to bring about the gilu that's nimshach through the Torah mitzvahs. Yeah, but what's the word in English? Mokim Mukhshar. I don't know. I'm struggling to find the word. Mukhshar. Mukhshar. It's a makom mukhshar. The word is escaping me. But the idea is clear. Yeah. So now we have a question though. So I thought that in order to have the gilui of the Ein Sof through our Torah mitzvahs, the appropriate place for it is Gan Eden. But l'chora, we're all doing Torah mitzvahs. Ever since Adam Rishon was chased out of Gan Eden, we're doing Torah mitzvahs out here. So what's going on? I thought you said that the place for Torah mitzvahs, if you want to bring about the gilui of the mitzvahs, of the Ein Sof that's brought down through the mitzvahs, you have to do it in Gan Eden. But we're living out of Gan Eden and we're doing mitzvahs here. So he explains, this that we could be mamshech the gilui through doing mitzvahs anywhere in the world, even in Eretz, even not in Gan Eden. Because first the person had to do an aveda. After he left Gan Eden, now he already had to work the land. In other words, when he was in Gan Eden, he didn't have to work the land. He had farmland. All he had to do was plant. He left Gan Eden. Now the Yidden first have to do an aveda to prepare it, remove the stones, fertilize it, aerate it, do all the things that you have to, so that you should be able to. So this is a whole new aveda. Huh? Gifted. Mukhshar gifted. Yeah, but that's on a person. Okay, well, now you can say that. The Indian first statement. So the Indian Lavedas Ha'adam, what's this aveda of Lavedas Ha'adam and Avedas Ha'adam, who lasts is Hamakim, the Elam Shia Mukhshar Lagili, that the entire world should be a place where we could get the Gilui of Ein Sof through performing mitzvahs, not only Gan Eden. Okay, I'll be right in the manner. Now we can get back to the pasuk that the Zohar brought down. So now we can understand all of these different levels in this pasuk. So it says like this: Shahayisa in the Eretz, what's the Mila? What can we bring? What can we add to Eretz? Which is Klalos Ha'elim Sheis Vusir Mechitzenis Malchus Hiba Kol, is to give Eretz the Madrega of Kol. Shenimshach B'Bechinas Kol, he Sfiras HaYesoid Shenikras Kol. So the Yisrin of Eretz, Chitzenius HaMalchus, what are we mamshich into Eretz? We're mamshich to it, Yesoid. And then we have the next level, Umelech L'Sada Nevad, Hu Amshachas Hagili Da'in Sof, Shalamayla Mebchinas Kol, Shaldekim HaMitzvahs. Then we're mamshich the Gili of Ein Sof, which is higher than the level of Kol, which is higher than Yesoid, through being Mekayim, through performing the mitzvahs. Kedisa B'Zayasham, Man Melech Do Melech Hilal, the Ischaber L'Sada Kadihu Nevad, which is that the Melech Hilal, the upper king, the Eibishter, connects and attaches to the field when the field is worked through the Yidden in the Aveda of Torah Mitzvahs and making it an appropriate place. Shaldei Aveda began Eden Sada Nevat, she Aveda the Kima Mitzvahs La'avder, Amachim Sasel, Shamash Mitzvahs Leisase, Nimshach Gila and Sof Melech Hilal, Shalamayla Gila de Bchinas Kol. We're Mamshach the Gila and Sof, which is higher than the level of Kol. Okay, let's make a quick summary over here. What he says is like this. In Malchus, you have Chitzenius HaMalchus and you have Pnimius HaMalchus, which we're going to explain in the next Eis, the difference, a very significant difference between Pnimius HaMalchus and Chitzenius HaMalchus. Eretz refers to Chitzenius, okay, the external, the outside level of Malchus. Sada refers to the Pnimius of Malchus, okay? Now, we're going to give each one what it doesn't have. Like we're going to see in a moment. Eretz doesn't have in it the Eretz of Atzilus. So we give it Kol. Through Yesod, we're mamshich into Eretz, the Eretz of Atzilus, of the Spheres of Atzilus. Then you have Pnimius HaMalchus, to Pnimius, which is Sada. To Pnimius HaMalchus, we're mamshich something. So Pnimius HaMalchus is already connected to Atzilus, like we'll see. So today we're mamshich something that's even higher than Atzilus. We're mamshich the Gili of Ein Sof, that's legamre higher than the levels of Atzilus. Okay, so he's going to finish this explanation now in the next Eis. But you can see already the way he laid it out. You have Pnimius HaMalchus, Chitzenius HaMalchus, you have Kol, which is Yesod, and you have the Gili of Ein Sof, which is Melech. Ubir Gimel Madregas Hanal, the beer, to better understand what these three Madregas are, HaMalchus, Kmeishim Tzadasmat. You have Malchus, as she stands on her own. And then you have Amshach, Sagilu de B'chinas Kol Yesod. You bring Mamshech, the Gili of Kol, which is the Yesod. And then Mamshach, Sagilu de B'chinas Melech Hilal, the Kima Mitzvahs. And then you have the Amshach of the Gili of Melech Hilal, the Gili of Ein Sof, into Malchus through the performing mitzvahs. What are these three things? So he says like this. We're going to start Bechlolos. Don't get confused. We're going to start Bechlolos. We're going to say like this. What's the difference between Yesod and Malchus? Shemalchus is Sheirish HaNivroim. What's the meaning of Malchus? Malchus is the Sheirish HaNivroim. And let's first see the mashal that he gives, a very beautiful and helpful mashal to explain this idea to us. And that's why Malchus is called a Dibur, Malchus Peh. Everybody understands that Dibur, when you speak, it's for somebody else. When there's nobody around, a person doesn't have to speak. He could do everything he wants without speaking. It's only when somebody else is there. He either wants to share something to somebody, or he wants to tell somebody something to do. He wants to explain something to somebody. So now he has to speak. So the whole idea of Dibur is for somebody else. And Rebbe explains it a little deeper. Then when a person speaks, it's nimshach to somebody else. The other person can hear it. The fact that somebody else can hear what the person speaks, the only way it's possible is if the dibur leaves the person and goes to the outside. If the dibur was part of the person and remained within the person, the other person would have never been able to hear it. Where am I? I'm sitting over here. Somebody else is sitting over there. Now you have to decide. Either I am you, and you are me. Yeah, and then it's all just one mishkabab that has no meaning, no difference. What are you even talking about, right? Or are you going to say no? Where I am is here, and I'm not over there. You're over there. It's a different place. So if you think about Dibur, what does Dibur do? Dibur, you can know what I'm saying. So obviously it left me. Because we agreed before that I'm not where you are and you're not where I am. I'm me, you're you. It's not one thing. So how could you perceive things from me? Through Dibur. The only way is if the speech leaves me, it goes outside of me and goes to somebody else. So that's the first level. That Dibur.
The other one listens. If he doesn't listen, he doesn't.
That's a whole other. That's a whole other story. Most of our life we spend speaking and other people not listening. Right? Like my Shrev once said that don't give your advice people when you're not asked for it. And even when somebody asks you for it, in 99% of the cases, he doesn't really want it. I find it to be very true. Anyways, I'll call upon him. So he say like this. So, but in addition to that, that dibur has to leave the person. The fact that the person has the ability to speak, even before he spoke, in its whole Indian is that he has the ability to talk to somebody else. If this is a very important point to understand when we get to the nimshal, the whole ability, the whole kayach, the potential to speak, is not something that's truly part of me, because its whole existence is only as a method, as a form of communication with other people.
But when you say something, when you learn and you say it out, so by speaking, even if no one else is listening, I'm saying you yourself understand better.
I had that question when I learned it also because what you're mentioning is explained in other ma'amarim to say that dibur draws out from places that are higher than chachma.
Right.
Valteva, I think, already says it in Tanya. That's why a child can understand things before he can speak. Because in order to speak, it comes from kadlus haseichel. So I had that question. How do they fit? I don't know. But there's obviously an answer to it, but I'm not sure. We're going to stick to what he's saying over here.
I guess the main purpose of speech.
If we're going to talk about dibur as a communication method, I guess the fact that I can communicate. When we say the kayach dibur, we mean to say that you could communicate. When we're saying that dibur brings out, helps a person clarify his thoughts. In this moment, he doesn't call it dibur, let's say. It's another Indian.
That's really more maybe machshava being done loud. You can do it also with machshava.
Yeah. When you're speaking loud to understand what you're saying, you're not going to use the same words you do when you're talking to somebody else. You're going to talk in a way that's barely comprehensible to somebody else. Alter mentions that in Tanya also. So the whole kayach itself, the kayach itself, is not really part of a person. It's outside of the person even before he exercised it. The etzem kayach to be able to communicate with other people has nothing to do with me. It has to do with other people. And now he comes back to the nimshal. Even when Sfiras HaMalchus is Malchus Datzilus, even before it goes down to give life to the creations, he sheirush Makar HaNivroim. Its Indian is that it's the sheirush and the Makar HaNivroim, and therefore, in this sense, it's outside of Atzilus. It does not have the Eirus of Atzilus. It doesn't have the Eirus of Atzilus.
So be sorry.
Just trying to clarify something. Good. So Ebazay. So Malchus doesn't have the Eretz of Atzilus. So, however, on the other hand, Yesaid who see him Atzilus. Yesaid is already part of Atzilus, and he gives another muscle over here. And he asks a question and answers it. We'll try to explain it without taking too much time. In other places, you'll see that midas have to do to somebody else. If you want to feel ahava without somebody else, you can't feel ahava to somebody else or something else. If you want to love a painting or this or that, without the zulas, without something else. So emotions is all about my reaction. It's not necessarily a reaction, but it's about my emotion towards something else. An interaction with something else. It's my so l'chura midas are outside of the person as compared to seichel. Seichel is already the person. That's already sitting on my own. Nothing to do with what's outside of me. So he says, no, it's not pshat that the whole idea is to communicate to somebody else. That the person himself is standing in a tnuah of his spilus and his eirus towards the other thing. Dibur is not that I'm standing in a tnuah of his spilus. Dibur is that I'm giving something to somebody else. It's leaving me. It's going. It's not that I am in a tnuah of speaking to somebody else. Pshat dibur is that I'm in a tnuah in a state of speaking to somebody else. It's much more than that's not pshat dibur. Dibur is not me. Dibur is I'm giving it to. It's leaving me. It's going to somebody else. I'm communicating with somebody else. It's leaving me. Midas is where I find myself in a tnuah of a hispilus of an emotion of an emotional excitement towards somebody else. So it's me who's standing in a different state right now. So it's more of an internal thing. It's a bissel an edler point, but we could say that Al Kapanim certainly as compared to Midas, Dibur is a chitzin, and Midas are pnimiyim. Yeah, could you agree with that, Maishi? That compared to Dibur, Midas are pnimiyas.
Yes.
Make sense? Yeah. So he says like this: Yesod is already part of the midas. The says that Atzilus itself. So what do we do? What kind of advantage can we bring to Eretz to Malchus, which is the Sheish and Ibrahim, who shenimshach b'bechinas kol Yesod siyum Atzilus? What do we have to do for Malchus? What do we have to do for Eretz? We have to be mamshechted. We have to grant it the Eretz of Atzilus by giving it Yesod, because Yesod is already Atzilus. That's what we have to do for Malchus. And now, like,
the Chaf Lamed, it doesn't mean the voice.
Yeah, no, it doesn't mean void. Yeah. He wasn't saying that. He was talking about dibur, speech, not quote, not a sound. He's talking about dibur. Now, however, he's going to switch it up a little bit. That's why I said don't get confused. He's going to go now into detail, and he's going to say be'etzem. Let's see. I'll just let him say it, but I'm saying don't lose track. He's zooming in and he's modifying it a little bit by talking more beplatius. Okay, so let's see what he says now. That this is the advantage of Eretz. It's on the flip side of it. Even though Malchus constantly receives from Zah, from the Midas. So where do you tell me that this is something new? It's a Yisrin. It's something new. So he says like this.
And Malchus, the whole meaning
of Malchus is to be Mefalel. So he's going to be Mefalel now. Ki hamshacha mizol Malchus b'derech klal ba'ofen shal yidei shehamalchus mekabelos b'seiches eres dezah he mishtanis. Through this, that Malchus receives the eres of Zah, so the eres of Zah change. He doesn't mean to say from the lashon it's mashma that.
No, the eres of Zah or Malchus.
Yeah, no, from the lashon it's mashma the Malchus changes. I don't know if it's a typo or not.
But
if you look in 17, you see clearly what he's saying is that the eres change. Al derech halavana. So you see clearly he means to say that it's the Eris that changed. It's not that Malchus changes.
It becomes not
okay? So
even though it's coming from the Eres Shemesh.
Even though it was the Eres Shemesh that came there, but it gets changed.
Now we call it Levana.
And it's different. It's very different. Can get a sunburn from the moon. Okay. Feel the clapping. So he says like this. So when we say b'derech klal, without the Yid Aveda, without the Yisn Eretz Bakoli, that Malchus receives the Eretz of Atzilus, it's not the Eretz of Atzilus as they are. It's the Eretz of Atzilus the way they're already changed by Malchus. You can't have the Eretz of Atzilus themselves come into Malchus. They're changed. Just like the light of the sun, once it reaches the moon, becomes something else entirely. So the Eretz of Atzilus, when they come into Malchus, they become something else. They're changed. Mishtanis, it's changed. And he has a different muscle. So let's go to his muscle over here. When a person has a feeling of love inside his heart towards somebody else, and then he speaks it. Since when his purpose of speaking it is in order to reveal it to somebody else. The ava that's nimshach from the dibur is on a lower level, legabe, the law of itself. This mashal itself requires a few mashalim to explain. But it's based on what we said before. Ava is what is a midipnimius. Ava is an emotion that's in a person's heart. If he managed to express it in words, the emotion is completely gone. It was changed as something else. Yes, the words express, maybe a muscle for that would be the comparison, or maybe this is taking it too far, I don't know. But you have music. Yeah, you know what music is. Most people, besides for the most amazing artists who could imagine things in their head and build a whole symphony from nothing, most people, when you hear music, you're bouncing, you're dancing, you're happy, it changes your mood. You're holding the sheet music, the notes, and the cooks, you know. So if you know how to read musical notes, so you know, yeah, this is the tune. That the musical notes is the music. Well, not the music. But it contains within it the music, but it's nicht das. It's that much lower. So the words of Ava, it's not the emotion. It's words that are trying to indicate. You want to know what's going on in my heart right now, I'll tell you. Just like the musical notes are trying to say, you want to know what this music, what it really sounds like. Look at these notes, you'll get an idea. It goes like this, like this. But it's nothing like hearing the symphony, like hearing the orchestra play. It's garnish nicht das. So al derech zeh, when the Eris Just like when the music is transformed into musical notes. It's also from Hasidus, and the point of there is that you could have it in it. That's why the biggest, musical genius could see in the notes. He could imagine it, and he could unpack it. But that's a different story. But some also from Hasidus, the musical notes, Lagabi the music, and the words of love, Lagabi the feeling of love in the heart, are coming to help us understand that a similar process happens to Malchus. When the Eris of Atzilus come down into Malchus, they go over such a great transformation that you can't compare them. So what are we saying when we want to be Mamshech Kol into Eretz? The Hayisa into Eretz, this new thing, this advantage that we're being Mamshech into Eretz, Malchus Ubekol, Yesoid Zoh, Shahamalchim Kabas Bechinas HaYesoid, K'moy Shehu Ba'atzmusay. As Yesoid is. That's as Yesoid stands, which is the Siyam Atzilus. So Malchus gets within it actually a part of Atzilus without changing the Atzilus. And now Malchus is truly part of Atzilus. Once Malchus gets the Yesoid, the way Yesoid is on its own, not the way it's Nimshach into Atzilus. And it itself, as it is, comes into Atzilus. So now Malchus has in it something of Atzilus Mamish. Okay, how could such a thing happen without it changing? In other words, how could it get the Eretz of Yisrael and still be Malchus? Let's see. שגם עוז תקבל הלבן מהחמה. מקום כן לא יהיה שינוי העיר כלל בהלבן, מכמו שהוא בהחמה. And like I said, I'm learning Samachla. Okay. So sorry, over here he doesn't take it apart and switch it up.
He's saying that it doesn't change.
Doesn't change.
He's saying
it's in the
Levana.
Levana.
He's saying the Malchus is Makabel, and it becomes a new entity.
Like
from Levana.
Yeah.
He's saying that, but then when it's Makabel from Yisrael, Bakel, so then it stays. The Erechama is at its original strength.
Yeah. And the mashal he gives us is imagine if the moon, the light that was coming from the moon, was the same quality. Yeah, which is the way it's going to be when Mashiach comes. Right now, when we get the light from the moon, it's a completely different light.
So nice.
Yeah.
But it's not in comparison to the light that's coming from the sun, where it's getting, that's the source.
And that's where it's coming from, right? When Mashiach is going to come, it's going to be Shnei Me'er Sagadelim. We're going to have the light that comes to us from the moon, which will still be reflected from the sun, will be the same light. The moon will be able to receive it as the light of the sun and pass it along and not change it. So that's the idea of Yisrael Eretz Bakali, that there's a chiddush for Malchus, even though it always gets from the Atzilus, but it's nishtaned. It becomes something else when it gets to Malchus. Yisrael Eretz Bakali is that it changes. So I'm sorry, in this ice is where he goes into detail. So now I get to pull out the mimer from Isaac Homler. I don't know the mimer from Isaac. Don't be me chayshid, but somebody bought me a birthday present. Mimer Shnei Me'er Sagadelim from Isaac Homler. So I learned the first side. I don't remember much of it. What I remember is he says that the moon then will be like a clear crystal. The way I imagine is like a diamond.
So in other words, it'll shine right through it.
It'll shine right through it. Now the moon is a
reflection.
It's a stone. It's not.
You're not getting.
It's just a reflection. It bounces off.
Could it be more real?
It's like a.
You're gonna see
it's going to pass it through.
Yeah.
It's going to pass right through because it's going to be a clear
So it's
crystal.
going to change the entity of the Levana.
Of the Levana, yeah. It's going to be just a clear stone. It's going to be like a diamond, I guess. The moon will be like a diamond. Mashu kazeh. Tonight. Okay, now he goes into detail. I thought over here is when he goes into detail. In Dal is when he goes into detail. This that we say that if you give Malchus the level of Kol, now you gave it a Chiddush. This is not a Chiddush, but to the Madrega from Eretz. It's only a novelty to the external part of Malchus to Eretz. Because the internal part of Malchus always had the Gili of Yesod. He's going to explain. The Kivan Shechitzenius Malchus had Dibur de Malchus, Inyana Hushi Sheresh Ibrahim. When we said before that Malchus, the whole union of Malchus is that's a Sheresh ben Ibrahim, now he's going into detail and he's saying we were actually referring to the Chitzenius of Malchus. So, Lachein Zeshanim Shechba Hagila de Bchinas Kol, Siyam Atzil Shalamanam Sheresh Ibrahim, we used in Chiddush. Since the Chitzenius, the lower level, the external level of Malchus, its whole definition is that it's a source for Biyah, for the creations, so it doesn't have any of Atzilus in it. And if you give it from the light of Atzilus, if you give it from Yesod, so that's a Yisrin, that's a Chiddush, that's something that didn't have before. But what if we talk about Pnimiyas Malchus, the internal, the inside, the depth, the true depth of Malchus? So over there, Yesod is already not a Chiddush. I was going to get Pnimiyas Malchus, Harei Adrab, in Yonish of Pnimiyas Malchus, the Gimel Rishonis, the Meichin of Malchus, who she Mikabelis Maha Yesod. That's the whole definition of Malchus, like you said before. Here's the answer. You said before that the holy name of Malchus is that it's Mikabel, the Eretz of Atzilus. So now we know. That's talking. I'm going to get to the Gimel Rishonis when we get to the Pnimiyas Malchus. When we get to Chitzenius Malchus is a different part. It's not that it's Mikabel from the Eretz Shalamah. It's that it passes the Eretz down to the other elements. So it says like this: Hushi Mikabelis Mea Yesod. So it's always connected to Yesod. V'zeu Gan Eden Nikra b'Shem Kol, and that's why Gan Eden is referred to as Kol. There are three people. There are three people. There are three people who the Eibishter gave them a taste of Elam Haba while they were still alive in this world. Who are those three people? Avram, who we're learning about and living with. Avram, who we're living with this week. Yitzchak and Yaakov. And how does the Chazal know it? Because Avram diksiv be Bakol, Yitzchak diksiv be Mikol, and Yaakov diksiv be Kol. Bakol, Mikol, Kol. It says the lashon of Kol by each one, and from this word Kol we know that they all had the Madrega of Gan Eden while they were still in this world. They used to bench them living in this world with Kol, with Gan Eden. Ki Kol who's Sfiras HaYesod, because Kol is the Sfira of Yesod. Gan Eden, whom Pnimiyas Malchus Shemikabelos MaYesod, and Gan Eden is from Pnimiyas Malchus, which is Mikabel from Yesod.
Excuse me. Why can't Pnimiyas Malchus give it over to Chitzenius Malchus? Why does it have to come back to Yesod?
Nachamon.
If you say that Pnimiyas Malchus always has it, regardless,
so why does
it have to go and take it from Yesod? Let Pnimiyas Malchus give it to Chitzenius Malchus.
Yeah, don't face it. Yeah? No. It's a taka klotz, which means it's a good question. Ich weiß nicht. Okay, mit Hashem, das wird Mamshich sein nächste Woche.
Ja.
Okay,